Hey, everybody.
All right, I'm just waiting for the countdown clock to officially hit noon, and then we'll get started.
And I'm gonna stop my video and listen.
Okay.
Valerie, I know how I know you. Through Annie Potts.
Oh.
That's how I know you.
Wait, Susan, how do you know Annie Potts? I know
We're
Annie
very old, dear friends. We've known each other for years.
Yeah.
And Alexa knows Annie too.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Annie Potts, I mean, this is a sideways connection, but went to Stevens College. And so I kind of knew of her and came to know her for many, many, many years.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's so great. Well, tell you what, it is noon. We have well over 140 attendees. People are checking in. I want to be very respectful of people's time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. First of all, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ken LaZebnik, the director of the LIU MFA in Writing and Producing for Television, the TV Writers Studio. And thank you all for being here. And I know people are coming. We have nearly 500 people who signed up for this, so people are going to be joining in as we go here. I wanted to start just letting you know how this afternoon came about. Our program mirrors an actual TV writer's room. Students are presented with an idea for a TV show. They create character arcs, talk about pitch story ideas, write outlines, write scripts. In year 2, we move into production and actually shoot excerpts of the scripts they've written. So we're deeply concerned with the dynamics of the TV writer's room. This fall, one of our students, Ruth Johnson, who is here with us, wanted to investigate how to make writers' rooms more inclusive, healthier, represent more voices. I proposed holding a symposium around this topic this spring as the last day of a planned collaboration with Betsy Marino-Layton's Unreal Media production company. We scheduled it, and then came coronavirus. I've always believed that the mission of a writer is to erase the margins between us, that when we as writers create authentic and compelling characters, we invite an audience to enter into the life of the other and create empathy for someone outside our own experience, thus erasing the margins between us. Now, COVID-19 has created all kinds of margins, but the pandemic has also erased barriers between rich and poor, privileged and aspiring. It affects us all. And in this time of pandemic, I think it's vital that we all keep writing. In crisis, writers have illuminated our darkest days where the human spirit bursts through, like, as in Tony Kushner's image, an angel breaking through a ceiling. So we forged ahead with today's symposium, partnering with Unreal Media to talk about the future of the TV writer's room. As the world enters a new normal, so will the TV writer's room. Informed by social distance and hopefully deeper humanity, the new writer's room will be, if we make it so, a place for the next generation of voices to prosper in a healthier, more inclusive, and perhaps virtual space. So here's how this afternoon lays out. We have 5 panels, and I want to give a big shout out to Alexa Junge, who was instrumental in gathering some of these incredible, incredible writers that are participating today. So we have 5 panels. Building a healthier writer's room is about to start. At about 12:45 LA time, my idea here is we're going to keep these to 45 minutes. Got a lot of folks, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So at about 12:45, we're going to bring in Are We Going Virtual, that panel. At about 1:30 Pacific time, it will be building a healthier comedy room. We will have oh, Alexa, you are on. Okay, I just got this text, so, okay. At about 1:30, it's building a healthier comedy room. We'll have a short break, and then, did I say? Yes, I said at 12:45, we're gonna bring in our Are We Going Virtual panel. At 1:30, it's time for building healthier comedy rooms. Have a short break at 2:30 Pacific time. We'll talk about the future of international writers' rooms. And at 3:15, we conclude with a discussion of mini writers' rooms, tools writers can use in the future. And that's where Betsy Marino-Layton and Unreal Media will really step front and center. So I want to first of all say thank you so much to Kamor Hartman, the assistant director of the LA TV Writers Studio. There's Kamor. And to these extremely talented writers and graduate students who have been instrumental in making this happen. Tamela Toddley, who is right now, she's one of those icons. You can wave to there's Tamela. And to Ruth Johnson, who inspired the whole thing and has been incredibly helpful. And it's kind of, Ruth is sort of at the driver's wheel of our tech right now. So it's really my honor to introduce this extraordinary first panel. So maybe you can wave when I mention names. Valerie Woods, there's Valerie. Valerie and I met when we were both writing and producing for Touched by an Angel. Over the past couple years, she's been the co-executive producer of Queen Sugar and is currently co-executive producer in a virtual writer's room on a new Netflix show that's going to be announced soon. Alexa Young, there's Alexa, is an award-winning writer with shows ranging from Friends to West Wing to her work as executive producer on United States of Tara and Grace and Frankie. She's also a playwright whose play Fingersmith premiered at Oregon Shakespeare Festival and is amazing. Glen Mazzara, there's Glen, is the creator and executive producer of The Dark Tower. Damien was the showrunner for the best seasons of The Walking Dead. This is my personal opinion, but it is widely acknowledged to be true. Robert King, very honored to have Robert with us today. Robert, in partnership with his wife, Michelle King, created and ran The Good Wife and the currently running spin-off, The Good Fight. They also created the CBS drama Evil, now in its second season. Becky Hartman Edwards. Becky has written for Parenthood, Life on Mars. She was executive producer of Switched and Birth, and her new show, The Baker and the Beauty, just premiered last week. Am I right, Becky? Yes, great. Holly Sorensen, there's Holly. Hi, Holly. Created and was executive producer for Make It or Break It and Step Up High Water, as well as serving as executive producer on Recovery Road. And Sarah Goldfinger, there's Sarah, hey, there's too many, like, it's the Hollywood squares. We have a lot of squares going. Has written for Jane the Virgin, Charmed, and is currently executive producer of Trinkets. So, have a lot of voices I want to hear from everyone. I'm going to start by posing the same question to each of you in turn, which is this. What are the key elements you found in creating a healthy writer's room? What's vitally important to you in creating a healthy writer's room environment? And maybe we'll just go sort of down the line, starting with Valerie as we introduced folks. And just remember to unmute yourself, and I'm very interested to hear each person's response to this.
Well, of course, it starts with a healthy showrunner, and and picking people who have different voices, but also serve the vision of the show. A healthy room is really guided by who the showrunner is and how inclusive and open they are to the voices in the room. I've been lucky. I've been in really great rooms with great showrunners who, I look at the group and it's, that voice, I know why they're there. I know why they're there. But they've created an environment where people can speak freely. What's said in the writer's room stays in the writer's room. And it's really finding different voices rather than the same voice. It's not everybody thinks the same way. Showrunner, I worked on a show, not Touched by an Angel, but another one that had an angel in it, Nancy Miller. She made sure she had an atheist on the show. She made sure she had someone who, although the character was cishet, made sure there was someone who was LGBT. And of course, the diversity in culture and age, but all of that, because everybody brings their perspective. So create a safe environment and a variety of voices and how they can enhance the vision of the show.
Great, great. Alexa, what about you? How do you like to try to create a healthy room?
Well, I remember when I first started, I was told that there are two kinds of rooms. Ones where you can disagree with the showrunner and ones where you absolutely can't. And that's been my experience. So you sort of have to suss out what kind of room you're in, and hopefully you're in a room with Valerie so that you can feel free to have bad ideas or come back. Like I have a rule where people can pitch. If I've dismissed something or the group has found something not to work, you're allowed to come back and repitch it once if you feel really strongly about it. So I try to find ways to keep people feeling like they're able to do their best and freest work. But I have a pretty democratic room too. Some people hold more to hierarchy in a room based on experience, and I don't really do. That's how I wasn't raised in television to do it that way. So there is a tension though, because when you're new on a staff, you want to listen and not pitch before you know what you're talking about, and you want to be willing to let go of ideas that don't seem to be flying. And but at the same time, from my perspective, I want people to feel like they can say, like, this is really weird, and pitch it, and it might be the thing we do. So
that's so great, Alexa, by the way. Just a side note, because you hear so much advice about, hey, if you pitch an idea and it's dismissed, don't hang on to it. Let go of it. And I love that you give people that second chance.
They only get the second chance, though.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Glen, how about you? What's your philosophy about building a healthy room?
Well, I think a lot of great things have already been said. I do think it comes from the showrunner. I think showrunners need to set the tone on day one as to how they want the room to run. I think vision of the show, they may have a very developed vision, or they might be looking for it, but they should want people to, they're trying to build a team in which people can take risks. So I always have a rule. It's very easy to knock material or to go through material, and I want people to be additive. I have a rule, please don't knock something off the table without trying to add something to it, to the debate. Very often writers have an idea they're waiting to pitch. So someone pitches an idea and then someone else just pitches their idea, but they're not listening. They're not responding. So then that person who just pitched was like, well, what's wrong with what I just said? So it's really about, I think the showrunner kind of has to, you want people to be excited, but the showrunner has to, kind of slow down the debate. I have a no interruption rule when people are pitching prepared material. I find a lot of time younger writers or women very often can get railroaded when other people are speaking over them. So if somebody's prepared material, I give them the stage, everyone takes notes, and then we go and destroy it and rip it up and all of that. But it's really about, being a showrunner, you're a bit of a ringleader, and you have to make sure everyone's comfortable and able to do their best work, like Alexa just said. And I think that's really about setting the tone from day one.
Great. Glen, by the way, who started off a talk to his students once with one of my favorite quotes, I've referred to it often, he said, TV is cool people doing cool shit. And
every episode, that's it.
Every episode, yeah. I've often thought about that. Thought, wow, that's a lot of truth in that. Robert King, please share with us and I'm right in saying that you run rooms with your wife and writing partner Michelle. So tell us about how you build those healthy rooms.
Well, I don't think I could say much more than Valerie said. I thought Valerie summed it up well. Diversity is a key thing, not just diversity in backgrounds, but also diversity in obsessions and what creative interests are, both structure, dialogue, some obsession on character. We seem to have a lot of people, you're looking at it as a bench of people, relief players in many ways. So with Evil, we have people who have seen literally every horror movie ever made. Our youngest writer on there is someone who's just obsessed with every horror movie. So we know if we're going down a route that someone has used, we want to do something different. But I think I think Valerie summed it up well. You're just looking for people who don't echo your point of view. I mean, yeah, Michelle does hiring. So Michelle is someone who's very open-minded and very obsessed and reads everything and looks for good writers. But then the meeting is very important. I hope before you leave here, we talk about the interview process, because the interview is the most important thing a writer can do other than writing a good script. And I don't think writers realize that. They win or die often in how they handle their interview. But we can talk about that later.
Well, let's definitely talk about that later. That's a great topic. But let's hear from Becky and your experiences, what you look for in building a healthy room.
I mean, a lot of the things that people already said, I agree with Robert. To some extent, you build it by first putting it together, and knowing your own blind spots. Just mostly Baker and Beauty, which centers on a Cuban family. One of the most important, we definitely hired a lot of writers with Cuban experience, and I wanted to have a whole a range of Cuban writers, so that one of the things, because when I started in this business, I was often the only woman in a room. And so anything that had to do with women, all eyes were on me. And I suddenly had to be like the voice of all women. And I never want a writer in my room to feel that way. So I try to have at least a few different, if there's a particular character that we need represented, I don't want just one writer, but at least a couple, so that no one writer has to carry that burden. Also with younger writers, I find staff writers tend to fall into two categories. Some that feel like they told them, like, you can't be too quiet. So they feel like they have to pitch whether they actually have something to contribute or not, or staff writers who don't speak at all. So I try to make an effort, you know, even if you're crazy, to check in with your staff, with the new writers who either are being very quiet, and I can suggest to them, you know, if you see that the room's teasing out a problem and you're not comfortable speaking up, if you go home and want to send to me and to the co-EP some pitches or solutions, like that's another way that you can start to share what you're thinking. And if there's a writer who's trying desperately to just pitch because somewhere someone told them, if you're a staff writer and you don't pitch, you're not going to get rehired, I let them know, like, it's okay, absorb it. You were hired because you're of value, and take your time to catch up. So those are just a couple of things. And then thirdly is just humor. And I start with my own self-deprecating humor and ways to just diffuse things, so that hopefully if you get a tougher, like two writers that are butting heads, you're able to make a bit of a joke that kind of can diffuse it without, you know, making anybody feel too bad.
Great point. Holly Sorensen, what are your thoughts about when you build a room, how to make it healthy?
All these thoughts are great. Becky, I totally related to everything you said. And I think we were in the same building this spring and winter. I met some of your writers, and Val too. I would say, you know, one thing Becky said is just really important. When you invite diverse people into your room, you have to listen to them. You know, I think a problem in show running is that people are told that they need to put a diverse person in their room, but they don't take the time to understand what that means. This person is bringing a wealth of experience, all their cultural identity to the table, and having just one person carry that load is too much. And it's assuming that diverse people are a monolith, right? That they all think the same, which of course we know is not true. But I've had a lot of showrunners call me and say, like, I need a Black writer. I know that you know the Black writers. The one I had in the room spoke too much. And I've had this conversation at least 5 times. If you're going to hire this person because of their experience, you've got to listen to the experience. And I think that's tough for a lot of showrunners to really accept. And you also have to create a room that accepts that person's experience and acknowledge that they're doing 2 jobs. They're doing the job of representing their culture as well as supporting your show. So you have to build a room where not only you are listening to this, but everyone in the room is listening to this. And also a room where people don't feel afraid to ask questions, and even push back on this. I mean, that's even the next level of that. But, you know, just be mindful that these people are doing multiple jobs, I guess I would say.
Great. And Sarah, tell us about your thoughts, building a healthy room. How do you go about it?
Well, I think this is sort of a version of what many people have already said, but I guess if I had to sum it up, I would say I lead from vulnerability, which isn't always easy, and I think is I don't want to generalize, but is a little bit more of a feminine way to lead. And I think that sometimes that can be a little like, oh, this is a different, like, it's okay to cry, and my writers are like, it's, you know, those things. So I think I start every day with successes and challenges, which is like a little sort of, you know, quick group therapy. And so I just feel like it really, storytelling and story breaking to me is a very intimate activity. And I feel like I just like don't want to dive in without being like, hey, where are we all today? Is everybody good? What's your experience? Did you get hit on the way here in your car? Like, just sort of, it's okay to bring a little bit of your day in, and then it's not like pushing at the dam for the rest of the day. Like, you've said it, people know where you're at, and then we greet you with like where you're at, and like, now let's get to work. And I feel like it's really helpful, and it starts the day where everybody has spoken. I mean, you can pass; it's not mandatory. But like, if it on a, you know, on a day where everybody participates, then everybody has said something out loud at the beginning of the day, and it just sort of takes us in and sort of that democratic thing that people are talking about.
And it just gets everyone's voice out in the room from the beginning, so that there's not that awkward thing. The first thing I have to say today is X.
A good idea, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, Robert, you've opened up a can of worms here, because we want to talk about building healthy rooms, but you can't build a healthy room without the people in the room. And you said I'm too intrigued. You say, I really want to talk about the interview process, which everyone has gone through. I remember Glen has a memorable story, I think, about his first interview in Hollywood. So what do you mean? Tell us about, I'm curious, because part of building a healthy room is building the people in it, and you can't choose a healthy room if people blow their interviews, I guess. Tell us about what you're thinking here.
Well, I'll give you some advice from myself and then some from Michelle. For myself, I guess we've staffed 7 or 8 rooms. The key is knowing the show. A lot of people come in not having watched the show. So there might be stumbling around saying, okay, and someone will say, okay, so you know the young character, the one who's the youngest? And you go, yeah, I know it because we've been writing it for 3 years or a year. And they will just be stumbling around just saying, okay, that episode, the 3rd one up, you know, it's like, no, you watch every episode of the show because you're trying to get a job that's going to pay you a lot of money. You're not going to go into a field and pick grapes. You're going to be basically working in a room, and you need to know the show. I am stunned by how many people do this. And I think because their agents line up 5 or 6 interviews at the same time, and they think, okay, well, this is just one of the 5 things I'm doing. No, it's one of the 5 things I'm doing, is sitting down to hear why you should be on the show. Sorry. And then Michelle's take, and this is a good one. I don't know, by the way, if I keep cutting in and out, do this, and I'll start over.
I'm hearing you okay.
Okay. Michelle says the female showrunner's position is interesting in that you need to know that a male hire will, and a female hire will defer enough to the female showrunner. So she always goes in with one of our male writers as the second person in the room. So she'll be interviewing, she'll have the male writer there, and she will know basically if all the eye contact is with the male writer, that they think the most important person in the room is the guy. So, I mean, the bottom line is know where the power is in the room and know the show. I mean, I don't even think it's that hard. Just know the show. Those are 2 rules. Type them down before you go in an interview. Sorry, but we've been doing a lot of interviews and people just don't know. And if it's a new show, know the IP that's underlying it. Know what else that showrunner has done and watch all those shows. It's very easy now with Netflix and with everything out there. And you can go online and look at IMDb, look at everything they've done and try to watch it or read it. And that's next.
All right. Great advice. You have a ton of aspiring writers who are hoping that they get those interviews. Yeah, Glen.
Yeah, I want to, can you hear me? I want to add to that because I think that is important. I've had many people come in and interview. So let's say I'm interviewing people for a new show that they can't watch the previous show. But, you know, I worked on The Shield. I have a Shield poster in my office. Very often people come in and say, yeah, I never watched The Shield. I like The Wire. Okay, great. I wasn't able to get a job on The Wire, or they, they don't know what seasons of Walking Dead I watched. So therefore, they haven't done their homework on who I am as a storyteller. And they could start, if they had, they could start to talk about, well, what is this story? And how can I, start to contribute and start to add to your vision? So that's really important, because it's about, I want somebody that I'm going to, they're going to get my back. They're going to help me tell my story. So they should know who I am as a storyteller. I think that's a big miss. I've seen a lot of people just not do their homework. The other thing is, I would say that, when you come in and you interview, you have, they already like your writing, right? Because you wouldn't already be in there. So a lot of times people come in and they're apologetic because they don't have the job. But I know you don't have the job. It's a job interview. So what I want to know is, what are your life experiences that I could learn and use and extrapolate and think that you're right for this job? So maybe you haven't written on a horror show, but maybe you were a journalist. Okay, a journalist knows how to organize material. They know how to write for deadline. There are skills that you have. Maybe you started a business. I used to work in an emergency room, so I can handle a set. I can handle a lot of chaos. So, instead of kind of hiding your past, what I love is for when people come in and they say, well, this is who I am, and these are all the 15 crazy jobs I've had. And I'm like, great, that's all stories. And plus you have skills that I can use on my show. So I think people come in and they, instead of saying, this is what I can offer to you.
Nice. Valerie and Becky, and I know Alexa keeps nodding her head. So let's go Valerie, Becky, Alexa.
Well, when I got the interview for Queen Sugar, Ava DuVernay was actually shooting When They See Us. So it was a phone interview. And we got started, and then it was, she got called to set. And she says, well, we'll make more time, we'll meet again. But then I remembered something she said in an interview that I attended. And she talked about going into an interview, and she said, be the one. Because at one time she was looking for an assistant, and she was interviewing, and she would wake up and say, please let this be the one. Because they want you to be the one. They don't want to interview anymore. So walk in and, like Glen was saying, be the one, tell them what you do, tell them what you can offer. So I remember that, and I texted her back and I said, look, you're very busy. I want to elaborate. And I elaborated on a question, and I said, this is what I do, et cetera, et cetera. And she texted back and said, welcome to the show, because she wanted me to tell her I was the one. So I would take that, you'll find that statement, Google her, be the one, walk in knowing what you do and what you have to offer, and tell them what you offer. Not what to do with their show, but what you offer, and be the one.
Great.
And not apologetic, like Glen was saying.
Great. Becky, you wanted.
Yeah, I find both, I've been interviewing people for jobs, but I also have often been, the interviewee, and the shows that have worked, or the writers that have worked for me, is often when I either passionately feel the show, and or I'm talking to a writer who does. One of my best interviews and experiences, not as a showrunner, but as a co-EP, and one of my best interviews in the last few years was Pitch, because I love baseball. And it was so easy for me in that room. I had read the script, I did this, I was able to talk about how, from age 13, it just spewed out of me. There was sort of no question it was a show I had to write, and I felt that, and I think they felt that in the room. And so when I'm interviewing writers, I'm looking for that same thing, because as Robert was saying, there are writers who are a lot of meetings, and there's a lot of capable writers. But when I'm hiring, I ideally would love to meet somebody who loves the show as much as I, that is definitely something I'm looking for, and you can't fake it. So hopefully, you are meeting on, or you'll know the meetings that go well because you love the show. And then another, I wouldn't say it's a trick, but another way of showing how you love it, especially when it's a pilot or a new show, talking about what you love about it, but without doing formal pitches of episodes that you want to pitch, because that's never good. But showing where do you think some of these dynamics can go, and what is some of the arcs you might be able to bring to it, and you kind of weave it in, and you weave it in. You're like, I relate to this because when I was a kid, I did blah 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 blah, or about a college was this, so I relate to this. So there must be stories between that guy and that girl. Anyway, there's ways that you show what you can bring as you're talking about why you love the show and your experiences, and you can weave those together. And then I'll shut up because there's so many people, but the one thing never to do, it always, to me, immediately, I will not give the person the job, even I might have lost working with good writers, is when they tell me why writing on this show is going to be good for their career. And I've had writers come in and be like, I'm trying to make the transition from drama, and I really feel like this show is going to help me do that. I'm like, okay. So those are my tips.
Great. I have a question. So by the way, for the many attendees out there, you can ask questions. There's a Q&A portal at the bottom of your screen. Ruth Johnson is sort of fielding questions and kind of curating questions for us. And Alexa, you are, among other people here, I think really well poised to answer perhaps a question from Jake Isbart, which he posed the question, which is a more difficult room to navigate, comedy or drama? You've done both. You have a moment to think. What?
It depends on the showrunner, honestly, and it depends on the environment that's created. The thing that's interesting about comedy, and it depends, I've only really, my early career was in multi-camera, but I haven't really been doing it for many, many years. But in rooms where comedy matters, it's interesting the way people, the goal can often be to get in as many jokes as possible. And I don't run currently, the comedy rooms that I run are more integrated and there's more cross-genre and drama going on with the comedy. So it isn't about pitching jokes. But when I first started, there really was a value put on how many jokes you got in, and other writers here can speak to this as well. And so you really had to, and the way people remember, the way memory works is that a writer will pitch a joke, the joke will either get a laugh in the room or not. And then if it goes into the script, you could go home that night and think, I got in 3 jokes. I always value much more than just joke pitching. But one of the things that was interesting early in my career was that I found that I would often sort of, as a woman, I would set the table by pitching an area for a joke, kind of what if this character were to do this, or this is the situation, and then a man would come in and pitch the joke and everyone would laugh and he would get the credit. And I think somebody said to me, you have to be careful because prior to Friends, I was on 2 other sitcoms, and on those shows, people were, you got rehired or not based on how many jokes you got in. And so I had to kind of train myself to wait until I really had it thought through and could kind of even write it down for myself to pitch the full joke. And I think it's just the collaborative nature that sometimes we have as women, where I always imagine I'm setting the table, for everyone, and then they're like coming in with their spoon. So, so it was interesting. And again, like that was a long time ago, and these days it's much more, it's more integrated. And first you're looking at story, and then you can close in on, we're doing a pass to improve the jokes. And I also don't mind, some people have a gift for doing it off the top of their head, and other writers need to be able to look at it and write it. Like they might be funnier on paper. And I want to really make sure that my staff can be a variety of kinds of people, because sometimes what you laugh at in the room may not actually hold up in terms of nuance. there's sometimes what you pitch to a screen is going to be flatter than like more interesting joke that somebody might come up with in the silence of their own home. So,
Right.
yeah.
That's great. Turning to Holly and Sarah, this was sort of a question I had planned, and it's sort of Alexa's memory of being the young writer in the room and how do you navigate that experience. Holly and Sarah, what tips would you have for the baby writers? You're a baby writer in a room. How do you successfully navigate your way through that experience? I remember when my first experience in a room, it was incredibly intimidating because it was, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what the expectation is, So any tips, Holly and Sarah, about, a baby writer in a room, how you handle that?
I can't imagine how intimidating that would be. I have the very weird experience of my first job in TV was showrunner. So I walked onto a set where every single person there had more experience than I did. I had life experience that lended itself to that. But one thing that I think baby writers should keep in mind is that increasingly the people I hire for staff writers are as good writers as almost anyone else in the room. I've had shows where the staff writers were in the top 3 best writers in the room. So don't think just because you're a baby writer that you're not able to write the show as well as anyone else on staff. We live in a world now where people have tons of life experience. They go to really fancy colleges. They do tons of online studying. People are coming into rooms with more experience in writing than I think they ever have before. So know that might be you. And if you're there for a reason. However, the protocol and etiquette of the room is also changing, as I mentioned before. I just think that you need to be willing to express your truth. This goes back to what I think Robert was saying, and also Glen and some other people. The importance for being yourself in the interview, really bringing everything you have to the table in the interview and not trying to tailor yourself to the show or what you think the showrunner might be thinking, is that then you can be more yourself in the room, even as a baby writer. Do you know what I mean? So, you're clear that the showrunner wants who you are because you showed them who you were in the meeting. Like Valerie said this too, like that is super important because what you don't want is to get the job and be a bad fit, right? So I think that being a good baby writer in the room really starts with having the right interview. And it's just crazy how many people, like I interviewed someone for my most recent show who had flown from New York City to LA just for this interview and hadn't watched the show. Like, what were you doing on the airplane, dude? I mean, it's crazy, right? So, but if you could just be yourself as much as you can in that process, you might not get that job, but that showrunner will know who you are. And how we're hiring now is because of the ATA action through conversations with other showrunners. And you might not be right for my job, but if you show me who you are, I know that you might be right for another job. And I also want to put in a plug for the WGA staffing portal here, because I did hire a team this winter off that portal. And one thing that you can do in that portal is write the showrunner a letter. And in that letter, you can tell them about what you love about the show, what you love about their past shows, what about your life experience, makes you right for that job, right? And you could put it all out there. So everyone who's a WGA person here, please use that resource because it's a really good one. It's a hell of a lot better than an agent telling me, oh, he's from New Jersey and he likes baseball. He'll be great for your, gymnastics show, right?
Mm-hmm. Great. Sarah, any advice for baby writers? And then I want to get to we have a couple of fantastic questions from viewers out there. But Sarah, how would you advise somebody new to the writer's room to navigate their way?
Okay, I'll tell 2 quick things. One is I tend to run a pretty democratic room like Alexa, and it sounds like a few other people on here. That said, when I have a staff writer, and this, I will say to staff writers, you are making a tenth of what the highest ranking person in that room is making. So if you speak 1/10 of the time, you are earning your money. Because I think that I want everybody to speak, but there is some big wisdom gained by being in writers' rooms for years. There just is. And so like there's something to watching the story ball get thrown around before you just like jump in and start playing. Like so I that's one thing. And the other thing is, and this is just, I'll speak to me, and I know that a baby writer doesn't always mean a young writer. So this is one of those examples. I happened to be young when I was coming up. And so I would stay after. I would, try to ease anyone's burden who might need it. Like, and I think one of the most important things, and I did this as a writer's assistant, there was a day where we just couldn't break the story and everybody left really frustrated. And I was like, 23, and I was like, well, I have nowhere to be. And I sat and I stared at the board and I tried to figure it out. And like, I don't think that I came up with anything good, but the showrunner noticed that I did it, and this idea that I was trying to serve the good of the show even after hours, or like that I cared enough to do that, I think was a huge boon for my position.
So here's a question from Devin Edwards, which is actually, I think, more and more pertinent because more and more people move into writing as a second career. And his question is, or her question, what is your advice on those who face ageism when trying to get in a room or even get taken seriously as a writer? Any thoughts? This speaks to sort of the healthy writer's room. Okay, Robert, yeah.
Know everything going on in pop culture. Not just every TV show going on right now, and TV shows that you might not like. Big Mouth, you should, I don't care what you think of it, watch every episode of Big Mouth. Watch every episode of Devs, be knowledgeable of what's going on now, what's going on, not just what's going on a year ago or 20 years ago. Literally now, listen to the new Fiona Apple album, because those are the conversations going on in the writer's room right now. Ageism is definitely alive, but Michelle and I didn't get our first real show running experience until we were 49, because I had a feature career before that was not very helpful. And so I think the key is show that you are current on literally everything. It is homework. It is homework, but it's pleasurable homework. We're living in some platinum age of TV, so literally watch everything and know all the movies, not just old movies, but new movies. Anyway, that's it.
Oh, that's great advice. Yeah, Glenn, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that part of the reason why younger showrunners are hesitant to hire older writers is because they're afraid they're going to be exposed as frauds, or because they don't know what they're doing. It's really incredibly hard to be a showrunner. You have to figure it out, and a lot of showrunners may not have management skills. You have to learn on the job. So the idea of an older writer who's going to be impatient or not put up with, going down this blind alley or that blind alley, I feel a lot of younger showrunners are intimidated by older writers. So, and I've had older writers, I know older writers who have, said this showrunner doesn't know what he's doing. The showrunner might feel threatened that the older writer is going to jockey for their position. So what you need to do is, in the interview process, you need to take that off the table. You need to say, I'm here for you. Just like Sarah stayed and was, she was 23. I want someone who's 53 or 63 staring at the board after hours trying to figure out the story. I want someone who's going to be in service to my vision of the show and the show. And I think certainly ageism is a huge problem, but I feel like some of these writers need to kind of show that they're going to be a part of the team and just acknowledge that younger showrunners could be intimidated by them.
Mm-hmm. Great. Here's a question. And by the way, I'm honoring everyone's time. This time has flown by. So we're closing in our 45 minutes. But this seemed like a really wonderful question from Rati Gupta. For the women, what were the hurdles you faced in being elevated to high positions? How did you navigate those? Any hurdles?
Can I just say really quickly, because I have a very quick answer.
Oh,
which
okay.
I think owning your own power is much harder for women than for men. And so I would say anything you can do to practice owning your own power in a healthy way is a good start. That's my.
Other thoughts? Anyone?
I would say the barrier to entry into Hollywood is a 20-foot wall. You know, for women, it's probably, and certainly people of color, it's probably a 40-foot wall, but don't forget the 20 because you're a woman or a person of color. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, there's a huge barrier to entry in terms of persistence, excellence, work ethic. That's real. And if you're a woman or a person of color these days, it is easier, but you know, don't let your race or your gender hold you back from doing everything you have to do to get in the room where it happens. And then, like Sarah said, you know, be insistent upon it.
And Becky, I know you had.
I mean, mine's quick and it's not exactly replicate coming up, and I was in half hour. I was really lucky that I worked for a female showrunner, Yvette Lee Bowser, you know, right during my sort of formative years in sitcoms. And so working for a female showrunner who, it was her first time, we both learned so much together. And there was really, I was so grateful there was not a barrier, because I was working for a woman who was comfortable enough in her own leadership and also knew what else she needed to learn. And we learned from each other, so that by the time I got to like co-EP level, I had been trained by a really wonderful woman and was able to bring that confidence and those skills to it. So I guess my advice to young women writers is work for Yvette. No, but I mean, sometimes see about finding female mentors or female showrunners. Not that they're all going to be wonderful, but that helped.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Alexa.
I think about this all the time because I'm a people pleaser, and I sometimes wish that I could like put on a David Milch suit and drive around inside of it, or like turn over, not David, I just admire him, but I wish that I could be someone that people were intimidated by, but that's just not going to happen at this point. It's too late. But what I do is think a lot about, like Sarah said, owning my power, but being okay with doing it in a way that's potentially, you know, more female. So there are certain kinds of writers, when a network gives you a note, they say, we'll look at that. And that really means is like, fuck you, you know? And then I'm the kind of writer where if I get a note, I genuinely think about it, and I will take anything I can. And sometimes you get dumb notes, but a lot of times there's something underneath it that you want to look at. So I now have a relationship with every network that I've worked at where they know that if I say I can't make this work, that I have thought about it deeply. And I would rather have that trust, which is something I've been able to develop over years of working with different people, than have been the person that said, like, you know, we'll take a look at that, but not actually done it. So I might, in my mind, think, well, you could say no and show that you're able to say no and keep people here, but my nature is more inclusive, so it's worth it to me to have that measure of sort of mutual respect and fungibility in both directions. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, Valerie. Yeah.
And finally, I would say, as a writer, whether male or female or person of color or not, really know your voice, know what you offer, and stand strong in that. It's the same about owning your powers. You know what you have to offer, or if you don't know, find out. Because, and also be willing to say no to something. My first agent said, it looks like big money, but put it in the bank, because there's going to be something you will want to say no to. And if you're broke, you might not say no, but be clear on what kind of work you want to do, what your voice is, what you have to offer, and offer that and stand in that.
Well, this has been fantastic. I will just end with, there's a couple of fantastic questions here. A young writer keeps getting called upon for tech support in a room of older writers. This comes up frequently. How do they navigate this? Guilty, you know, it's like, and then from one of the LIU students, Alex McGuire, how much outsized influence do TV networks have on the rooms themselves? Do they have a large say in what writers are staffed? Or are they good about leaving that to the showrunner? If lightning round, and then we got to move on to our Are We Going Virtual panel, but lightning round on this question about your experiences with the influence of the networks as you staff a show. Just, I'm just going to.
Very little.
Very little? Okay. Glenn.
I'll say the networks, I think, would have more say with first-time showrunners, and they would try to put more experienced people in the room. But once you run a show or two, my experience is, you know, you make a case for the writer you want, but you pretty much get who you want.
Okay. Valerie, you've just taken a drink. Your experience?
It's the same as what Glenn is saying. If you're new, the network would be more involved, but if you've staffed a couple of shows, they trust, and they've been successful, then they trust you and you get to staff who you want.
Becky.
I just did one with ABC and they were up our ass the entire time. But maybe that, you know, for Dean and I, you know, neither of us have hits like some of the people here, but it was a battle literally to get any of the, like all the writers approved.
Okay, Alexa?
Yes, the thing that I've encountered, because I don't have hit shows on the air, is, well, previously it was, will we have hard funny in the room if we don't have men? So literally, like, you know, I had too many women, and therefore the network would kind of force you to hire somebody that they had to deal with. And you really didn't, there were staffs that I've tried to put together where I've had very little say, except for the lower level people. But it's different, you know, it changes. But what's interesting is the amount of people that are dinged, which is a word we use, which means the network says, oh, we've had a bad experience with them. And I've even had that happen to people that they had the wrong person. But when you sit with them, sometimes you wonder how I've ever even continued to work, because who knows what the situation was. You know, that's why it's so important to call around. And when I hear women are crazy, I immediately call. It's like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, who's saying that, and what's the context? And so definitely talking to each other about it is important, but it can be brutal.
Cool. And Holly,
I suspect it's harder in network. I don't know why. That's my assumption, but in the streaming world, you can pretty much have who you want.
Cool. And Sarah, your thought?
I second that, having worked in both. Netflix was the only involvement they had was they wanted to hear the reasoning behind the diversity we were choosing. That was it.
Great, great. Well, I can't thank you enough on behalf of all of the attendees, and thank you so much for your time. This is incredible 52 minutes. Thank you so much. We are moving on now to our panel on virtual. Valerie, we were hoping could stick around because she's working in the virtual room right now. And of course, needless to say, anyone who wants to stick around, please, you're totally welcome. But we are going to sort of officially move into our Are We Going virtual room. And we have writers with experience in virtual rooms. And I am turning to Kanisha Foster. There's Kanisha,